Homestead, and welcome to my channel. In this video, I guess this is going to be kind of a part two to a video that I did, the last video I did called The Earth to Become a Celestial Sun, who will be translated, two parts to the first resurrection, where we learned that Joseph Fielding Smith is, it's his opinion, and he says that it's his opinion in the Doctrines of Salvation that the earth will become essentially a star or a sun and be inhabited. And we started to kind of get into some deep stuff there, but okay. It looks like this idea is backed up by Brigham Young. Now, just from the very beginning, I want to make sure everyone understands, like, I don't think that they, and I tend to go with their opinion. They're prophets, so I'm going to go with their opinion. If things like this, the moon and the sun are inhabited, it's probably not by people like us or aliens, or it's probably beings that essentially are angelic or translated or resurrected, right? We know that Christ has been resurrected, and oh, sorry, there goes the daily siren. If you can hear it in the background, I'm sorry. It always goes off at noon. We know that Christ and others have been resurrected. Okay, so is it really too difficult to believe that possibly the sun is more than just a large nuclear explosion that's continually going off? That might be what we observe with our instruments, but this probably isn't the only dimension, and who knows if, that's just kind of what we see in this like fallen state, this fallen, dimension, for lack of a better word, that we're living in. Maybe if you were to level up, you would see those people that are there. Maybe, most likely, I would assume, people that have been resurrected and are of the celestial order. So I'm not going to really like push this idea, but I want to explore it. So make of it what you will. And with what we're about to read from Brigham Young, what I don't know is, did Joseph Fielding Smith base his opinion based on what Brigham Young said? Are these two separate opinions? Do they have these opinions because, they've been shown things? We have accounts in the scriptures that Abraham, Moses, they were given visions of essentially all of the Lord's creations. And therefore, they probably have a really good understanding of how things actually work that we're not aware of right now, and that maybe we can't detect even if we tried to with scientific instruments. Is it possible that prophets within our dispensation have been shown things, and even though they probably wouldn't tell us right now because it's not the time, maybe they've dropped a couple little hints. Maybe they've been allowed to do that. So this is shared to me from Barbara Short O'Brien, and I think that this quote from Brigham Young, I think this is the one that people that are against the church use to be, it's like one of the classic arguments against the church. Brigham Young believed that there were people on the moon, that blah, 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 blah. Which is, we're going to read what he said, and that's not the right context. I think what I'm talking about is the right context, that people that have been translated or possibly resurrected, maybe they do temporarily right now reside there. They have to be somewhere. They're not just like floating in space, right? The city of Enoch, I don't know, maybe it's just like in space somewhere, but what kind of makes more sense to me is maybe they've been taken to a terrestrial world, right? This is something that you have to keep in mind. Let's look at the three Nephites. We've been talking about them lately. I just want to point something out about being translated. When you go to 3rd Nephi, chapter 28, verse 30, this is talking about the three Nephites. It says, "And they are as the angels of God, And if they shall pray unto the Father in the name of Jesus, they can show themselves unto whatsoever man it seemeth them good. So this is interesting because if this is their normal mode, it seems like the default setting for for them is that they're hidden. They're hidden. You can't see them. They actually have to pray to the Father in order to show themselves. Okay. Now, that could be an oversimplification. That's just kind of how it reads to me. So, could it be that if you're in a state of being translated, like the three Nephites, John, the city of Enoch, Melchizedek and his city, that you aren't, your default mode is not, you're not visible to the naked eye. You're out of phase. You're with our reality or dimension. You're um, not visible. You know, when we look at the moon, I think it's pretty clear just with the naked eye that the moon, it looks desolate. It's all gray and white. It does look like it's a solid object. Um, you know, it looks like it's a sphere, and I don't doubt that it is at all. I think that it's just like what science says it is. But science may not be able to detect everything about the moon. You know, until we're able to like lift the veil. There's probably multiple like there's probably a veil where you can like see translated beings. There's the veil of forgetfulness. Unless you're able to do that, you may not see the translated people that potentially. I'm not saying that there are, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's maybe where the city of Enoch went. Who knows? Who knows? Okay. So if you're like, oh, of course there's no one living on the moon. Look at it. There's no air there. They can't live on the sun. It's a gigantic nuclear explosion. Well, from our point of view and what we're able to detect, but there's probably many layers. And when I say layers, I'm talking about dimensions and things that we're not able to observe. Okay. So I think that that's how we need to read what Brigham Young is saying. He's not saying that there's aliens on the moon. Uh, it's just it's so silly. Okay, so let's see what he said. Okay, oops, I'm zooming in too far. Um, I think I want to start here just so that we get right. No, you know what? I better do the paragraph before. Just to give you the full context. Now, if you want to like go more into the apologetics of this statement here, I have Fair Latter-day Saints pulled up. I'm not going to go over this, but I'll put this in the description if you want to like look what they said about it. But I think if you just use a little bit of common sense and logic, then you'll understand what he's saying. So he says, "It has been observed here this morning that we are called fanatics." Right? Isn't that still what we're called? Right? By some, not everybody, but by some. Bless me, that is nothing. Who has not been called a fanatic who has discovered anything new in philosophy or science? We've all read of Galileo, the astronomer, who, contrary to the system of astronomy that had been received for ages before his day, taught that the sun and not the earth was the center of our planetary system. For this, the learned astronomer was called, quote unquote, fanatic and subjected to persecution and imprisonment of the most rigorous character. So it has been with others who have discovered and explained new truths in science and philosophy, which have been in opposition to long established theories. And the opposition they have encountered has endured until the truth of their discoveries have been demonstrated by time. Now, let me stop there and let me explain that, my understanding of that. Within academia, okay, and researchers, people with a PhD, just all of that group. Okay, imagine that you're somebody, you've worked really hard to get your PhD, and then after that, you're a researcher and you're working on a theory, and there's like enough to like substantiate the theory to where it seems like that is actually truth, but then later new information comes along by some person, maybe someone that's not even a PhD, that goes against your theory that you've been working on for 20 plus years. So for a regular, not prideful person, that would be a bitter pill or a hard pill to swallow, right? Because it would make you feel like all your work has been for nothing. It's been a waste of time. But if you're a prideful person, right? If you're a narcissist, it's probably going to really upset you, and you're not so much cared about the truth. You're more concerned with your reputation, your career, your legacy, and so not having any regard for the truth, you may fight against that new information because it damages your work that you've worked so hard. So I think a lot of that kind of thing happens within science, and people are slow sometimes to accept certain truths, simply because it's not just like one scientist or researcher. Um, Sometimes it's groups of people, and they intimidate other people. Maybe they have the power in their hands to make someone look like a fanatic, ganging up on somebody that's bringing out some truth that you don't like. So some people have to fear for their career what other researchers will do. Um, so you see what I mean. So anyway, let's continue. How was it that Dr. Morse, when shut up in the attic of an old building in Baltimore for more than a year, with a little wire stretched around the room, experimenting upon it with his battery, he told a friend that by means that he by means of that he could sit there and talk to Congress in Washington? Was he not considered a fanatic and wild and crazy? Certainly he was. And so it was with Robert Fulton when he was conducting his experiments with steam and endeavoring to apply it so as to propel a vessel through the water. And all great discoverers in art, science, or mechanism have been denounced as fanatics and crazy, uh, and it has been declared by their counterparts or their contemporaries that they did not know what they were saying, and they were taught to be almost as wild and incoherent as the generality of the people who now think George France is trained to be. I will tell you who the real fanatics are. They are they who adopt false principles and ideas as facts and try to establish a superstructure upon a false foundation. They are the fanatics, and however ardent and zealous they may be, they may reason or argue on false premises till doomsday, and the result will be false. If our religion is of this character, we want to know it. We would like to find a philosopher who can prove it to us. We are called ignorant, so we are. But of what? But what of it? Are not all ignorant? I rather think so. Okay, now so there's the context, and now here is the meat for this video. Who can tell us of the inhabitants of this little planet that shines of the evening called the moon? So he's saying, who can tell us about them? Okay, when we view its face, we may see what is termed, quote, the man in the moon, and what some philosophers declare are the shadows of mountains. But these things are very vague and amount to nothing. And when you inquire about the inhabitants of that sphere, you find that the most learned are as ignorant in regard to them as the most ignorant of their fellows. Okay, so let's stop there. Now, I trust science. I trust that the moon is what science says that it is. To me, it looks like there's that it's a world, that it's a solid object, that it's just what science claims that it is. Again, that doesn't mean that there aren't people that are translated or because essentially while in mortality, and if you're translated and you're living either a terrestrial or celestial law, it would make sense that with translation you'd be able to live on a world that's terrestrial. We know that the Earth is going to become a terrestrial world. and that the people living a telestial law will not be allowed to be here. So it makes sense that to me that, again, people like the city of Enoch, Melchizedek, maybe others could be there as they wait to rejoin the earth in the latter days. And on top of that, there's weird things when it comes to time. We know that the closer you get to the throne of God, uh, I don't know if the flow of time itself slows down. So, like, if we were to have like a real time feed of someone on Kolob, if they would look like they're moving in slow motion, or to them looking at us, it would look like we're going in, fast speed. I don't know if that's the case, but it could be. It could be that what if like Enoch and his people, they've been there for these thousands of years, but to them, maybe only so much time has gone by, maybe just like a few months or a year, and then they are going to be the actual ones that come, and we'll see Enoch. And to him, it's like no, not a whole lot of time has passed. I'm not saying that. I have nothing to really base that off of. Just I'm going off of what it says in the Pearl of Great Price, but I don't know if that's talking about the actual flow of time. Um, but anyway, these are just things to think about. These are things to think about. So with Brigham Young, I mean, obviously, it seems like science has confirmed what the moon is, and that that it has mountains and stuff like that. An argument can be made about actually traveling there. Um, that's what that's mainstream history, but there are doubts to that among certain groups, and um, I'm not going to go into that too much. So we may not know fully everything about the moon, but anyway, so let's move on. He says, so it is with regard to the inhabitants, so it is with regard to the inhabitants of the sun. Do you think it is inhabited? I rather think it is. So this is a prophet, and I don't think that he's saying this as necessarily as an official declaration or a prophecy or something that we have to accept, but I will go with a prophet's opinion until demonstrated otherwise. And how are you going to demonstrate that there aren't celestial resurrected people living there, and not necessarily the way that we know the sun, but maybe on a different plane of existence or a different dimension? He says, do you think there is any life there? No question of it. It was not made in vain. It was made to give light to those who dwell upon it, and to other planets. And so will this earth when it is celestialized. So here, it's like he's talking about Earth becoming a star or becoming a sun, which obviously that flies in the face of astronomy, modern day astronomy. An astronomer would be like, no, because the Earth is a rocky, solid object. It's small. Stars are stars because they basically have all this fuel. I think it's mostly hydrogen. I don't know if helium also, but it's basically, a star is where you have nuclear processes going on in the form of fusion, and so that doesn't even make any sense because the Earth is a planet. The planets are made of stardust. There's nothing that's going to start this planet into a nuclear reaction. But that's based off of our conventional science, and we don't know everything, and maybe there's a lot more to it than that. Maybe science is wrong. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of it is. Science has changed over time. There's truths, quote unquote, that have been accepted in the past that were later revised and changed as we gain more knowledge. And I don't think there's any way science could really say for sure. All they can do is observe what is currently observable, and try and come up with like models of how the universe works, and I think it's all very good, and there's a lot of smart people that work on it, but we may not know it all. We may not know it all. And you also have to take into account whatever influence Satan might have over the world of science, education. There are secret combinations, and they have power. They have an interest in controlling things like history, science. They want it because Satan wants to control the truth. He wants you to believe uh, that anything religious is just crazy. You shouldn't believe it. Um, you're alone in the universe. You're small. You're insignificant. Your life doesn't really mean anything. So just have a good time. Party it up and just have a good time, because you're just a speck in the universe and you don't really matter. So there's probably going to be things that are revealed in the millennium that are maybe shocking. Shocking because we've been operating based off of imperfect science, or possibly even flat out lies in some cases. Not calling science a lie, but there might be some things that are intentionally hidden, obscured, not talked about, right? Because it doesn't go along with the philosophies of the day. Okay, so um, okay, so it's interesting because Brigham Young here, he's talking about the Earth becoming a celestialized sun. And that's what Joseph Fielding Smith said. And I don't know if Joseph Fielding Smith was inspired by Brigham Young, or if he had like a separate experience or a set of circumstances that caused him to believe that. But continuing on, every planet in its first rude organic state receives not the glory of God upon it, but is opaque. Now, if you don't know what opaque is like, it has to do with transparency. I deal with it all the time in Photoshop, because you can change the opacity of different layers and stuff like that. So if something is more opaque, then you can't see through it. It's solid. But if you lessen the opacity, then it starts to become more and more transparent. Okay, so he's saying every planet in its first rude organic state receives not the glory of God upon it, but is opaque. You can't see through it. But when celestialized, every planet that God brings into existence is a body of light, but not till then. So that's an interesting concept, that before a planet is opaque, you can't see through it. It also kind of implies that it's like our world. It's hard, it's rocky, it's solid. But then it would seem, according to Brigham Young, that once it becomes celestialized, then he says it becomes a body of light. A body of light. So I don't know what the full reality of that looks like. I will trust him, though. I will. And then he says, Christ is the light of this planet. God gives light to our eyes. Did you ever think who gave you the power of seeing? Who organized these little globules in our head and formed the nerves running to the brain and gave us the power of distinguishing a circle from a square, an upright from a level, large from small, white from black, brown from gray, and so on? Did you acquire this faculty by your own power? Did any of you impart this power to me, or I to you? Not at all. Then where did we get it from? From a superior being. When I think of these few little things with regard to the organization of the earth and the people of the earth, how curious and how singular it is. And yet, how harmonious and beautiful are nature's laws. And the work of God goes forward, and who can hinder it? Or who can stay his hand now that he has commenced his work? Okay, so that's what he said. He seemed to be dropping hints that in my opinion, again, I don't think he's talking about aliens that are currently in their living their mortal life that are inhabiting the moon. I think he's referring to, if you want to think of it as angels or resurrected beings or people who are translated. Oh, well, I think that these celestial bodies are probably pretty good candidates for places for these people to go as we're going through our mortal existence. Or, maybe the universe is so vast, and there are many inhabitants throughout all of the worlds that God has created. There might be some people here, again, not extraterrestrials in a state of mortality, but who knows if maybe there's help from other places to help govern our world. Um, it could be really complex, and I think that's one big reason why the church doesn't go too much into that. It's not really important for us to know. It could be very distracting. Um, but it seems like we're given just maybe a little bit, something to think about. Now, Barbara Short O'Brien, she left another comment, and then she also sent me something on Facebook. I wanted to point this out. She says Abraham 3:5, that the moon is greater than the earth, would hardly make sense if the moon were a desolate globe. Yeah, I could see that logic. If there was nothing there, could it really be greater than the earth? I mean, unless like the moon has some sort of properties or something where there's like natural phenomena that makes it higher than the earth. We know that it affects like the tide, right? Um, and it also affects a lot of other natural systems, uh, as far as like biological systems, and animals use it. So it could be greater in that sense, but I think it makes more sense, like what you're saying, Barbara, that yeah, maybe it's like a base of operations. And I don't want to make it sound like that, but just like a residence for heavenly beings. Anyway, Satan is in charge wherever you look. It's not the governments, but Satan himself. That's why there's so much. I'm not going to say that word. Information that's skewed, given to us, and evil laws have been enacted. I do not believe much of anything the government wants us to believe. Yeah, I think we should definitely be skeptical. Skeptical. Oh my gosh, skeptical. Let me just read that scripture though. Abraham 3:5. And the Lord said unto me, the planet which is the lesser light, meaning the moon, lesser than that which is to rule the day, even the night, is above or greater than that upon which thou standest in point of reckoning. Okay, in point of reckoning, for it moveth in order more slow. This is in order because it standeth above the earth upon which thou standest. Therefore, the reckoning of its time is not so many as to its number of days, and of months, and of years. So in this verse, it seems to be saying that it's greater because of its reckoning of time. Which again, that doesn't mean that what Barbara's saying isn't true. Also, that it's also inhabited by angelic beings. But it seems that time factors in as well. And we learn about that actually later in this chapter. In verse 13 it says, and he said unto me, this is Shinha, or Shinha, which is the sun. And he said unto me, Kolob, which is star. And he said unto me, Olea, which is the moon. And he said unto me, Kokabim, or Kokabiam, which signifies stars, or all the great lights, which were in the firmament. Um, oh, maybe that's not what I was thinking. I do have facsimile 2, brought up. Here it talks about it. So figure 1. Figure 1 is this strange figure right here with like faces pointing both ways, which I'd say universally when you have a being or an animal or something like that that's looking both ways, it represents time. So looking at the future, seeing the future, looking at the past. And that seems to maybe be a hint that because we know that God is, it seems that Heavenly Father is above time. He sees all. All time is before him, like all together is essentially what the scriptures say. So it would make sense that Kolob right here would have a symbol like this. But anyway, so it says Kolob signifying the first creation, nearest to the celestial or the residence of God, first in government, the last pertaining to the measurement of time. So it seems that as you approach the last pertaining to time, you're actually higher. Like that's a higher state of being. It says the measurement according to celestial time, which celestial time signifies 1 day to a cubit. 1 day in Kolob is equal to 1,000 years according to the measurement of this earth, which is called by the Egyptians Ja-O-E. Um, and it could be because it might be if you were to like go world by world all the way back to Kolob, it's like time is like slowing down, it's slowing down, it's slowing down, and then maybe when you get to actually to God's presence, it stops because time is no more. You're now in like a higher dimension, you're above all of it. Does that make sense? It could be. I kind of get that sense. Now, I wanted to read figure 5. Figure 5 is right here. It's this ox or cow or whatever. And it says, okay, figure 5 is called in Egyptian Enish Go-Ondash. This is one of the governing planets. Okay, governing planets also. And it is said by the Egyptians to be the sun. So this may be a language thing, I don't know, but it's talking about it being a planet and also the sun, which would infer that the sun is a planet. Which goes against, it goes against science, or at least our current level of science. But based on what we've read, it would seem that the sun is a celestial world. Okay, that at one time it was maybe a planet like ours and has become celestialized. That seems to be the destiny of our planet based on these quotes and opinions of Joseph Fielding Smith and Brigham Young. Okay, so I just find the wording here in facsimile 2 interesting. And then it says, and to borrow its light, so the sun borrows its light from Kolob through the medium of Kai Van Rush, which is the grand key, or in other words, the governing power, which governs 15 other fixed planets or stars, almost as though they're like the same category or on co-equal or something like that. As also flow east or the moon. The Earth and the Sun in their annual revolutions, this planet receives its power through the medium of Kli Floss is S or Ha Ko Kau BM. Sorry. The stars represented by numbers 22 and 23 receive light from the revolutions of Kolob. So this is like really deep stuff and stuff that I don't think that we can understand right now. I think it's interesting that you have different names here. So here in facsimile 2, it's called flow east or the moon. But like what it's saying here, these seem to be the Egyptian words for these different celestial bodies, whereas here in Abraham 3, somewhere, let me just look it up. Here it says, and he said unto me, this is Shinaha, which is the sun, which that's a different name from what we just read. And then he said unto me, Olea, which is the moon. So, so maybe this is the more pure name or actual name, Shinaha or Shinaha and Olea. Whereas in facsimile 2, these seem to be like the Egyptian names. But it's interesting that both names are preserved in these scriptures in the facsimile. Verse 17, oh, there's a 17. It talks about how it reiterates the fact that the moon is higher or above the earth. It says, now if there be two things, one above the other, and the moon be above the earth, then it may be that a planet or a star may exist above it, and there is nothing that the Lord thy God shall take in his heart to do, but what he will do it. So it's just another reiteration that the earth is below the moon in terms of, well, in terms of time, and seemingly in terms of, I guess, closeness to the Lord, or currently it's in a state of being less holy. And you have to wonder, like when we're talking about the degrees of glory, and you have, the celestial being compared to the sun, you have the moon being compared to the terrestrial glory, and then stars compared to the telestial. You have to wonder if maybe there's more to that, like the moon being a literal terrestrial world of sorts. Now, when the Earth becomes terrestrialized, I don't think it's going to look like the moon, but it's also not going to be in a terrestrial glory, because there's a difference. There's a difference between, like right now we're in a celestial state or condition, the world is, and you and me are, but that's different from when people who are resurrected receive the celestial glory, which will be way, way better than what we're experiencing right now, both personally, like physically, and also as far as whatever world they go to, whatever a telestial glorified world looks like. So it could be, for all anyone knows, if the sun is a celestialized world, and it has its glory. In other words, it's not just a celestial in a celestial condition, but it's celestial glory. Then maybe the moon is too. Maybe the moon is terrestrial glory, and so it'll still look different from the Earth when it becomes terrestrial. I don't know. These are just things we don't know, but it's fun to think about. It just kind of demonstrates the grandeur of this whole thing and how much more complicated and grand everything is than what we understand right now. But we have been given little bits of information in Scripture for our benefit, and maybe for those who are looking for it, then we can just appreciate these things and have something to look forward to. Okay, so I had a couple more things. She also sent me this in Facebook. There's like these two slides. I'm guessing that this was from some kind of presentation. Well, no, it looks like maybe this is like a screenshot, actually. I'm not sure. But we have this, which I found the actual source right here in the Journal of Discourses. And then this one where I was not able to find the source, but I don't think I'm going to doubt it. I'm gonna say I think that this is a valid source. I wish I knew where it could be found. So let's read this. what exactly did Joseph teach the saints? I think I lost my place though. Let's look up the word. Okay, here we go. I found where I highlighted. So with this one, we're looking at Orson Hyde, Journal of Discourses. This is called the Man to Lead God's People, etc. Okay, when should we want to be rich? When the curse is taken from the earth. We do not want the earth while it is cursed, for cursed be, quote, cursed be the ground for thy sake. Let the world that love darkness rather than light be heirs of the curse if they will. But do not let us seek after it with too greedy hearts until the curse is taken away. And when the curse is rebuked and the earth undergoes such a change that it will shine forever and ever, and there is no night there. And then he's referencing Revelation chapter 22. The last couple chapters, just so you know, I looked it up here. When you look at the chapter heading, this is talking about the earth once it's celestialized. Okay. For chapter 21, those who overcome will be the sons of God. The earth attains its celestial glory. And then chapter 22, if it would please not disappear when I click on it. The saints will reign in celestial splendor. Christ will come and men will be judged. Blessed are they who keep his commandments. Okay, so he's referring to the earth when it's celestialized, that it will shine forever and ever, and there will be no night there. And it actually says that. It says that, in fact, I have it right here, verse 21, it's on the side. And the gates of it shall not be shut all day, for there shall be no night there. Chapter 21, verse 25. Then we may have it, and it will do us good. It is like this. We say that wheat and barley are excellent when we use them in their native state, but when we extract the spirit from these grains and drink it, it intoxicates. When they are used in their native state, they make bread, which gives life to the body, while in the other state, they destroy. That's an interesting concept, isn't it? Misusing things. We have it here. You know, the argument's always made like, well, if it's so bad, then why did God create it? Well, he created everything for its proper use, but he also allows us to misuse things because that's part of our probation. Are we going to use things properly or misuse them? So, okay, so the earth, when the curse is taken away, will sustain an endless life. Though the figure is not altogether correct, still it serves to illustrate the principle. The Savior did not say the saints should inherit the earth while the curse was upon it, but he said, quote, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." He will not give them something to destroy them, but they have got to stay until the earth has fulfilled the measure of its creation. And then the angel will raise his hand to heaven and swear that time shall be no more, or shall be no longer. Which, I think that once you reach that celestial state of being, you become like God, and there probably is no time any longer the way that we experience it, where it's like in one direction. When you listen to people that have had near-death experiences, it's very, very common. And again, like I say so many times, you have to take it with a grain of salt because some of them are just flat out lying. They're doing it to sell books or just simply to get attention. There are people like that. There's always wheat and tares in any group of people. Okay. And the near-death experience community is no different. But I do think that there are people who genuinely do have the actual experiences. And based on my own just intuition and feeling, I feel like one genuine thing that is reported is that time basically ceases the way that we understand it. They tell their stories in a linear fashion because that's how we are currently living, and it's impossible to communicate how they actually experienced their experience. But I really do tend to think that time kind of stops. When you think about the temple, okay, you uh, you go through the story basically of the plan of salvation, and it's about movement, and you move closer to the presence of God until you reach the presence of God. But once you get there to the celestial room, it stops, and it's quiet, and it's peaceful, and you can sit down, and it's as though time stops. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I feel like there's evidence to support that idea. All right, so okay, so tell me, ye wise men, ye philosophers, will not the greatest and most powerful planet attract it, whether it goes up or down? For the greater bodies attract the lesser, right? Just like the sun, if that is actually the size, it's much larger, has much more gravity, and it through gravity, it holds the planets in place. So, all right, continuing. If the Earth falls and is not to rise again, it will be removed out of its present orbit. Where will it go? God says he will gather all things into one. Then he will gather the earth likewise, and all that is in it in one. The gathering will be upon a larger scale in time to come, for by and by the stars of heaven will fall, which uh which okay, which way will they go? They will rally to a grand center, and there will be one grand constellation of worlds. I pray that we may be there and shine among those millions of worlds that will be stars in Almighty's crown. I'm going to have to take this one with a little bit of a grain of salt. I don't know if this is just his own interpretation of Matthew 24:29. You know, it talks about the stars falling from heaven. So that part, I don't know. I'll take it into consideration. Could be. I don't know. It's interesting that he's basically, again, he's there's the ambiguity between stars and planets. Uh, so he's talking about the worlds as stars that are in Almighty's crown. All right, continuing. The earth will have to be removed from its place and reel to and fro like a drunkard. The fact is, it has got to leave the old track in which it has roamed in time past and beat a new track. And saith the Lord, quote unquote, come up here. What is he going to do with it? Why, take it where the sun will shine upon it continually, and there shall be no more night there. And the hand of God will wipe away the tears from all faces. Quote, come up here, O earth, for I want the saints who have passed through much tribulation to be glorified with you, and then I will give the earth to the meek. For I will take the curse from it and rebuke the destroyer for your sakes, and bring all things into subjection to you, and you shall dwell in everlasting light. End quote. Now, now it is half day and half night, but I tell you, it is not going to be half and half, but there will be no night there. Again, he's referencing Revelation 21:25, so this is when the earth has been celestialized. We have but one sun to shine upon us, but when the earth is taken out of its orbit, it will come in contact with the rays of other suns that illuminate other spheres. Their rays will dazzle our earth and make the glory of God rest upon it, so that there will be no more night there. So that's different from what Brigham Young and Joseph Fielding Smith conceptualized, because if the earth becomes a celestialized star or sun, then you would think that probably it produces its own light, right? So there's a little discrepancy there. I'll probably go ahead with Joseph Fielding Smith and Brigham Young simply because they are prophets. But it's not like that. It's not that big of a deal. Um, is it possible then that there are worlds reserved in eternal light, in an eternal eclipse, rolling in the shade? What is their use? They are the homes of them that love darkness rather than light. And it shall be said unto them, Depart ye cursed into outer darkness. There are planets that revolve in eternal darkness, that you who love darkness rather than light may go and find your own home. There's a place prepared for everybody, no matter what their character. Says the Savior, quote, I go to prepare a place for you. There's a place for every person. There's a place for everybody that comes into this valley, if they can only find it. So there is a place in yonder world for every person, but to him that overcometh will I give power over the nations, and he'll be a pillar in the temple of my God, and go no more out. All right. All right, and then we have this quote. This is from Parley P. Pratt. What exactly did Joseph Smith teach the saints? Quote, the stars that will fall to earth are fragments which have been broken off from the earth from time to time in the mighty convulsions of nature. So that's an interesting idea. Again, this would probably fly in the face of science, but I don't know, maybe not. Because science does recognize that Earth, it was subject to a lot of impacts, in the early solar system. So that could go along with science because maybe there are fragments of the Earth that are flying around the solar system that eventually would make their way back. I don't know. Okay, so he continues, these all must be restored again at the times of restitution of all things. Now, there it is again, restored, right? Because we talked about this in the last video. You never really, when you think about restoration, you're thinking just simply about the church. You're thinking about ordinances, priesthood, um, old, more ancient observances, information, knowledge. You don't really think about the earth itself being restored. But that's what we talked about in the last video, how the earth is going to be restored to its paradisiacal state. And here, Parley P. Pratt is talking about uh, physical portions of the earth that have been broken off coming back and being restored. That's interesting. And then he continues, when these fragments, some of which are vastly larger than the present earth, okay, now that's getting kind of wild, are brought back and joined to this earth, it will cause a convulsion of all nature. The mountains will flow down, the valley rise, the sea retire to its own place, the islands and continents will be removed, and the earth be rolled together as a scroll. Now, this language right here, this is some of the stuff that I have the hardest time imagining. Not believing, but imagining. I don't know what things are going to look like, feel like when the continents come together. There's talk about the oceans going to their own place in the north, mountains going down, valleys rising, because that sounds mighty chaotic and quite a ride. Let's just say that for anyone that's on the earth. We know that the righteous will meet the Lord in the clouds. And so you might be tempted to say, well, maybe it's while that happens that the wicked will be destroyed, burned, the earth will come together. Well, I don't think that's the case, because I don't think that anyone living a terrestrial life is going to be caught up in the clouds with Christ. So there's going to be people, I would assume, on the earth as it's doing all this stuff. And I have no idea what that's going to be like. We do know, we have research that everyone will be translated, everyone that's moving on to the millennium, so maybe that'll help people survive as all these things are going on. As far as him saying that there are fragments that are larger than the Earth, uh, I'm going to keep an open mind. I kind of doubt that a little bit, but I don't know. I don't know. Um, there's talk about. I think there's talk about Earth, like in mainstream science. There's talk about Earth and Mars having a common source, as well as the Moon. I think. Okay, hold on. Were Mars and Earth one planet? I can't remember. I cannot remember if that's one of the theories. But okay, I'm just thinking of ways to make this true, because if there was a fragment that's larger than the Earth, Earth is the largest rocky planet in our solar system. Let's see. Size of planets. I am pretty sure that out of the rocky planets, Earth is the largest. I think it's larger than Venus. Venus, slightly smaller than Earth. Mercury is only 1/3 the size of Earth. Mars, about half the size of Earth. Yeah. So either we're talking about planet X, or I don't know. He could just have it wrong, but maybe if he's right, then that's kind of amazing. It'd be amazing if, like, maybe these other rocky planets are supposed to be part of Earth in the future. Maybe they're supposed to be restored to Earth. I don't know. There's nothing to support that. But anyway, all right. Well, thank you, Barbara, for sharing this. It is more to think about. I don't think it's too wild to think that the sun and moon may be inhabited by translated or resurrected beings, and maybe not in this dimension, but others, or in however it works with not being able to see people who are translated, like the three Nephites. I'm gonna say definitely that's a possibility. If there's two prophets that felt that was the case, even if they didn't have it 100% correct, or if they weren't able to reveal everything, I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna consider that, and it's not anything that anyone's testimony is based on. I guess we'll find out the truth whenever that time comes. But it's interesting to think about, and it's kind of exciting. It's exciting to think that all these worlds are not just dead, lifeless, for no purpose, that they actually do something. And who knows what's going on with the gas giants, or with Pluto, the asteroid belt. Who knows? But with this little bit of information, and if it is correct, there's probably a lot more going on than what we currently know, and it would probably blow our minds. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.